So good evening, everybody. Whenever there is an energy summit, I would like to just share some numbers to get a perspective of where India is today. If I take the consumption of crude oil per person, per barrel per year. For USA, it is 22 barrels per person per year. For European Union, it is 7. For China, it is 3. And for India, it is just 1. And the world average is 4.5. Then comes electricity. USA is 14,000 kilowatt hour per year per person. India is about 1,400. China is 6,500. And Europe is about 7,200. The point I'm trying to make is, India is an energy-hungry country. And the way our economy is developing, energy is the first parameter. It's a barometer of progress, that it is going leaps and bounds. Now, I was just hearing the last conversation. November 2022 was a path-breaking month for the energy sector. That was the day ChatGPT was launched. And let me tell you, life has never been the same again. By 2030, AI will consume 1,000 terawatt hour of energy, equivalent to that of what Japan is going to spend in 2030. So, ChatGPT, AI will have its own advantages, that was being discussed. But initially, it requires huge amount of power. Power hungry it is. And the worst part, or the best part is, it needs a reliability of 5 nines, what we call it. That is 99.999. That is the way power reliability is demanded by AI for functioning. And this power reliability, unfortunately, doesn't come from renewables. It comes from dispatchable power, that is coal, gas, or nuclear. That is why you must have also read that Microsoft and other companies are going for their own SMRs for powering their AI systems. So AI is a boon, yes, maybe, but at this point of time, we need to supply that humongous amount of power that is required. And then as I sum it up, for the consumption of energy, you know how much energy the world is consuming every day? If I convert all the oil, if I convert all the gas, if I convert all the coal, I'm talking about the fossil fuels, and make them into oil equivalent, the world consumes 300 million barrels of oil equivalent every day. So when we talk of energy transition, we are talking of displacing. That is the future, what we are looking for. But at least to make a dent on these huge numbers. And then let me tell you, today the world is burning more oil, more gas, and more coal than ever before. So that is the reality that we have to all keep in mind when we talk of energy, energy sector, energy transition, and the way the world is moving. Now in 2020, when the COVID crisis struck the world, there was a narrative, I think you all must have seen it, that the world has seen the peak of oil. There was a very big CEO, I'll not take his name, he made a first statement that the world has seen the peak of oil. 2020, April. That time the world was consuming 99.5 million barrels of crude oil every day. And after that statement from that person, an entire narrative started that yes, oil demand is going to collapse because of COVID and it will never pick up, and that's it, world has seen the peak of oil. And then the thing that happened was really alarming. So much of investment in the E&P sector was slashed. You must have read in those times, billions and billions of dollars of investment in the oil sector was slashed because everybody said, okay, the era of oil is over. But if somebody who has been in this business for me like 20, 30, 38 years, it is very difficult to displace oil. It is the most energy dense product what we have got, and we can't wish it away. So during that time, when I was the chairman in COVID time, we got nearly 20 million tons of refining capacity projects approved, and they will be actually up and running by, say, next year end, because the country's demand was going up. That was a small blip, that COVID time. In fact, the overall consumption of oil during the COVID time, in hindsight, we saw it only fell by 10%. It was 90 million barrels per day in that particular year against the 99.5. So the decision what we took in that times was something that is going to change the destiny of the nation in terms of energy security. Now I'm coming to the topic of public sector undertakings. Public sector undertakings, our main aim is not profit. It is beyond profits. It is actually serving the nation in a silent manner, because finally energy stability, energy security, and energy access are the main drivers of public sector undertakings. And these are some things that happen very quietly. During the COVID time, I must mention this because many of you may not be aware, who are not from the oil industry, that the demand for petroleum products fell, obviously, during the lockdown, etc. And the worst part was, or the best part was, whatever you look at it, it didn't go to zero in some sectors. Diesel, petrol, they crashed. Aviation crashed, but still it was required in some measure. So all the refineries, I can talk for Indian Oil with confidence, but the same is applicable for the other oil companies because everybody worked that way. We have got 11 refineries, including the 2 group refineries. We had to tweak our operations to make diesel, petrol, but make more LPG. Normally LPG, Indian Oil supplies about 26 lakh cylinders per day. And in COVID time, Zomato was not there, Swiggy was not there. I think all of us were cooking in our kitchens. We were trying out new dishes. And the effect was the LPG domestic consumption went to 34 lakh cylinders per day. So this was something unbelievable. On one hand, everybody was going for a lockdown. The oil industry didn't have the luxury of lockdown. We didn't have the luxury of work from home. Just like the Indian Army, the oil industry cannot work from home. We have to be on ground to deliver. And that is what all the oil companies did, delivered the products. And I'm sure none of you must have ever experienced, even in those trying times, any news that there has been a shortage of some petrol, diesel, or LPG. I think it was phenomenally well. So that credit goes to not only the leadership, but the entire value chain. That is the employees of the company and the channel partners. Channel partners, I mean the pump attendants who are working day in and day out, and most importantly for the LPG delivery persons. During the time of COVID, a son was not going to his father's house for the fear of contamination. But these LPG delivery people were visiting homes, delivering the cylinders of total strangers. And this ecosystem, this channel partners, what we call, that is 5 lakhs for Indian Oil, it must be double for the OMCs, 10 lakh people, that's the way they were all working. And silently. We didn't want to be the face of the nation, we wanted to be the backbone of the nation. In fact, during that time, to keep my teams motivated, I had to tell them that we are like the goalkeepers in a football match. Nobody remembers how many goals the goalkeeper has saved, nobody bothers, because that's his job, they say. But you will be remembered for every one goal you concede. You are remembered for that. So we were like the goalkeepers, and I'm very happy to share that we didn't concede a single goal during that point of time. Secondly, let me tell you, when the refinery operates, I mean how the entire ecosystem was working. I want to just explain that because these things never come out in the open. And as was being discussed when Mr. Sharma made a point, that the oil industry doesn't tom-tom, it happens very quietly. So this is also one classic example. See, the crude oil normally we purchase from abroad. Normally 85 to 88% of crude oil is imported. And that crude oil ordering, whatever we call it, is done about 50 to 60 days in advance. So when the COVID struck, already the crude oil was en route to India. It was already coming to India. So that time we had a huge tanker congestion at our ports. All our ports, there was a bunching of tankers. And in this bunching of tankers, there were also tankers of LPG coming. Because LPG, nearly 60% India imports. We only produce 40%. So amidst this bunching of tankers, the port traffic was so humongous, we had to get the LPG tankers on a priority berthing. So even the ports, they worked so hard. It is not an easy thing. For me, today I am saying it very easily. But during that point of time, to get the LPG tankers, get a priority berthing over the other tankers, get the LPG moving to all the LPG bottling plants, which are more than 200 for the oil industry. I mean, that system went off so smoothly that you cannot imagine. And in a country where today, if I switch on the light in my house and the bulb doesn't glow, I'm okay with it. ठीक है, load shedding होगी, something may be there. If I open a tap and the water doesn't come, I am fine with it. होगा कोई problem होगा आज. But I guarantee you, not one of you has gone to a petrol pump and the petrol pump was dry. Anybody here? So that is the reliability of the oil industry that we have given to the nation. Absolutely dependable. And let me tell you, dependability and reliability are two emotions which are more powerful than even love. You can love somebody, but you may not be trusting that person. Hota hai life. But this is the way the oil industry, all the oil industries I'm saying, I'm speaking for Indian Oil, but it's true for all of them. The trust that we have developed in this country is enormous. And due to that trust, we have to ensure the energy security of the country. Now, suppose we just don't care, we just go for green, because that's the topic of the day. Let's go green. But then let us understand that suppose the systems, conventional systems are here at this point of time. And if I start greening, unless I green to this extent entirely, I can't reduce my conventional system. There will be an energy crisis in the country. So the oil industry is riding two horses because India is undergoing two transitions. One is the energy transition, which we are all aware, and the second is the transition of India from a developing economy to a developed world. So this transition is going to consume so much of power, so much of energy, that we have to maintain both. The energy security, we have to maintain the core business. Our core business has to be going on strengthening. We can't ignore that because the entire energy security of the nation is falling on these companies. So we are riding two horses, very difficult, but we have to do it. So we are strengthening our core business and we are also going green. Whatever way we can, we are taking steps in all the directions to have green footprints. Here I want to also add that one of the first companies in India to declare operational net zero was Indian Oil. Operational net zero means scope 1 and scope 2 emissions we will counter. And that happened, we took a date of 2046. And after that, many other companies, everybody has followed through. All the oil companies today have an operational net zero target. That is, whatever we produce, the products, they will be net zero. We will nullify those emissions. Now, in the process of making this operational net zero targets, we have invested about 2 lakh crores Indian Oil up to 2046, I'm saying. And same thing for the other companies. So this has also given a fillip to all the other investments in the country for green energy. So this also is a part of public sector's undertakings that the major investments come from the oil sector. Today, the oil sector among the entire public sector undertakings is about 40 to 45% of the entire investments come from the oil sector. And they are happening every year. Like Indian Oil, I can tell you, last 10 years, 30,000 crores every year we are doing it. And let me tell you, even in the times of COVID, when there were no other investments in the country, Indian Oil did spend that 30,000 crores because we fully understand and appreciate that unless big majors like Indian Oil invest, the entire economy of the country will not take a boost. So we invested even in those times. Even in those worst of COVID times, our projects were happening all over the country. The refinery expansions, what I was just talking. So that is the role of the public sector, that it's not just today. We think for decades. When you are in the business of oil, the vision is decades. It is not 1 year, 2 years, or 5 years. Because of the simple reason that when you talk of energy, like today if I talk of a refinery, I want a refinery to be set up, then it is not possible to come before a decade. It takes at least 10 years. It takes at least 10 years for a refinery to come up from the moment you think about it. So that is the reason why decisions have to be taken on time, considering the fact that total dependence on the refined products elsewhere will be disastrous. Today, already we are importing 85% of crude. So our next goal should be energy sovereignty, because we need to be sovereign also in terms of our energy. I think that is also one aim that India should have, and India is having. And that is the way the world is moving towards. Because after the Ukraine crisis, everybody realized the importance of energy sovereignty. When Russia just switched off the gas to the European nation, all realized that over-dependence on one source. Europe was over-dependent on the Russian gas, and they fell in deep crisis. Even you won't believe, Germany went to the extent of burning wood that first year because there was shortage of, because they had no infrastructure to even import gas. That was the problem. They were so reliant on the easy gas coming through the pipeline. So now the oil companies are ensuring that we have a very diverse crude basket. We understand fully that over-dependence on one source is not right for the energy security of the nation. We have increased our diversity of the crude basket. Our crude appetite, what we call as the appetite is the word we use in the oil industry, that what crude is suitable for each refinery. We have increased the crude appetite basket also, so that more and more crudes are available to our refineries. We have got blending facilities of crude oil at our big terminals, that is Kandla, Paradeep, and the blending means we can buy an opportunity crude and then we can blend it with the other available crudes so that we get a cost saving. One more thing that the oil industry has been doing silently is the entry into petrochemicals. Till it was a APM scenario, that is administered price mechanism scenario, we were not allowed to go in the petrochemical sector. But then once we were allowed, we have taken giant strides to go in the petrochemical sector. I mean, this is not known normally why we are going for petrochemical sector. Because the margins in the refining business are extremely thin, wafer thin margins. And to be commercially viable, these companies, we went for the petrochemical sector because the petrochemical sector hedges the risks in the refining margins. So that is how the petrochemical sector is increasing now, day by day. In Indian Oil, we have got about a petrochemical intensity index. That means how much of crude oil gets converted into petrochemicals. It is about 10% now. We have a vision to go to 15% by 2030. And all the new refineries that are coming, they will have a petrochemical intensity of 25. That means nearly 25% of the crude gets converted to petrochemicals. So along with the stability of the operations, supplying energy security for the nation, we are also into petrochemicals to ensure that we remain commercially viable. Because finally, we are commercial organizations. We also need to be in profit, though not the only motive, but we need to be profit to remain viable for the nation altogether. So I thought of sharing these points today because normally public sector, just by saying CPSEs, everybody is written off, But beyond that, CPSE is what everybody is doing, what each and every employee is doing, with what mission they are doing. That is the way the whole world is. And just before I close, I want to tell you one small thing. Normally, every company has got a core value, Like Indian Oil had a core value of care, innovation, passion, and trust. But then I told my people that, look, this core value is like a hygiene factor. I don't think any company can operate without trust. Every company, the trust is required. So let us find a core value which defines Indian Oil. And we'll throw it open to everybody, to all our employees. And I'm very happy to say that one value that came overwhelming high was nation first. So Indian Oil took upon the value of nation first as its core value, the fifth core value. I think we need a clap. So that is the main thing, that once we have the nation first ideology. Okay, I will end with that. So that nation first, it sums up everything. It's not just profits, it is nation first, and that is the way we are all going. I think the minister has just arrived, so I will I will wind up my thing, and I was actually going to end it also. And as Sharma ji said, Indian oil is summed up in two words. Pehle Indian, fir oil. So thank you very much. Jai Hind.